Hello everyone! Tonight we are wandering across an ancient plain that feels like it's been forgotten by time itself. Imagine this: you shuffle along through dry, yellowed grass that crackles underfoot, the kind of grass that remembers glaciers. The air is sharp, a cold that clings to your skin and seems to whisper, "You probably won't survive out here." Your breath comes out in thick, lazy clouds, and out in the distance, just as the horizon turns from black to bruised purple, with the first hint of dawn, you spot strange mounds and holes dotting the earth like scars. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You walk slowly, your boots, or let's be honest, probably fuzzy slippers if you're watching this right, crunching over frost-crusted grass. The plain seems endless, a flat sea of brittle blades stretching in all directions, and the only landmarks are those odd mounds and deep black holes. At first, they might remind you of giant molehills if moles were the size of minivans. The cold wind stings your cheeks, and somewhere behind you a crow, or maybe some prehistoric cousin of a crow, lets out a hoarse caw that sounds like it's just as annoyed to be awake this early as you are. Your eyes adjust to the dim light, and you realize the mounds aren't random. They're patterned, scattered along what must have once been migration trails, or perhaps territories of enormous creatures. The size of the holes, each easily wide enough for a person to climb down without crouching, makes you pause. You picture a giant armadillo, a glyptodon, maybe lumbering across this plain thousands of years ago, dragging claws as thick as broom handles through the earth. Historians still debate whether these beasts really dug their own cold burrows or simply expanded natural cracks in the land, but tonight we're going to act like they did. You crouch near one of the gaping burrow mouths. The ground around it is disturbed as if something big and heavy once pushed its way inside. The edges of the entrance are smooth in places, polished by the comings and goings of countless armored bodies. You touch the lip of the hole, it's cold, the soil hard as concrete from the freezing air, but you can still see where ancient claws scraped it into shape. Fun fact: modern armadillos, tiny compared to their giant ancestors, still dig burrows, though theirs are a bit less dramatic. Some even manage to collapse patios and garden sheds, which might explain why I once had a neighbor who went full conspiracy theorist about suburban sinkholes. You stand and look around. The wind shifts, carrying the sharp, clean smell of frost mixed with the faint tang of soil. It's quiet out here, too quiet. No birds flutter up as you move, no rabbits dart between clumps of grass. Just you, the wind, and these strange, ancient scars in the earth. And as the sky lightens, turning the grass a ghostly silver, you can't help but wonder what it felt like for those giant armadillos lumbering out of their cold homes at dawn to face predators twice their size. A low mound near one of the holes catches your eye. Maybe it's just a trick of the light, or your imagination running wild, but it almost looks like a collapsed section of tunnel where the earth caved in after centuries of rain and frost. You walk closer and see small stones that seem to have been shoved aside, forming a rough rim around the mound. Were they dragged there by the claws of a digging giant? Or was it just the natural settling of the earth over time? Historians still argue about that too, of course. As the sun finally hauls itself above the horizon, painting the plain in pale gold, you notice something unexpected: a single tiny flower frozen solid, but still upright, growing right at the edge of a burrow mouth. It's a little splash of purple in a world of grays and browns, and you can't help but grin at the absurdity. Even here, life refuses to quit. And just for a second, you wonder if those giant armadillos ever stopped to sniff the Ice Age flowers? Probably not. But hey, it's a nice thought. You shuffle closer to the nearest burrow, drawn by curiosity and maybe the faint hope that it will somehow feel less cold near its mouth. No such luck. The air seems even chillier here, as if the burrow exhales the memory of long-dead winters. The entrance is massive, easily wide enough for a grown adult to walk into without ducking their head. You pause, taking it all in the rim of the burrow, worn smooth in places where the ancient armadillo's armored hide must have rubbed the earth compacted like stone by the weight of countless entrances and exits. You step forward, your foot sinking slightly into the soft soil at the edge. The ground here feels different from the frost-hardened plain around it. Maybe it's because of the way the burrow holds and channels moisture, or maybe it's the weight of history itself pressing down. You crouch, running your hand along the wall of the entrance. It's smoother than you expect, the packed earth polished by generations of scraping claws and shifting plates of bone armor. Imagine claws the length of your fingers, each one curved and sharp enough to rip through roots and stubborn dirt. Kind of makes your garden spade look sad, doesn't it? Historians still debate whether the largest of these burrows were entirely dug by the armadillos themselves, or if they took advantage of natural caves and fissures, but standing here, you can't help but feel impressed. The structure seems intentional. An engineering feat by a creature with no blueprints, just instinct and a lot of muscle. There are ancient claw grooves visible if you look closely. Deep striations cut at angles that suggest a rhythmic scraping motion, almost like a slow, patient dance with the earth. You lean closer, peering down into the darkness. The tunnel stretches on farther than the light of the rising sun can reach, a black mouth that seems to promise both shelter and danger. A sudden breeze stirs the grass behind you, and for a moment it sounds like the sigh of something enormous just beneath the ground. You chuckle softly to yourself, brushing off the chill that races up your spine. Relax, it's just wind, probably. As you study the entrance, you notice how the opening is reinforced by the natural layering of the soil, strata of clay, silt, and sand packed tightly by centuries of weight and time. The design, if we can call it that, is surprisingly stable. Some modern engineers have even studied these burrows for inspiration in building subterranean structures. Fun fact, there was actually a project in the 1970s where scientists tried to model storm shelters after armadillo burrow shapes. Didn't quite catch on, but hey, points for creativity. The sun rises higher, and its light begins to slip further down the tunnel mouth, revealing more detail. You can see where smaller animals, perhaps opportunistic squatters after the original builders moved on, have left their mark. Tiny tracks crisscross the soil near the entrance, rodents. Reptiles, maybe even early humans scavenging for shelter or bones. Historians still argue about whether ancient people ever deliberately expanded these burrows for their own use. Some say yes, pointing to tool marks and hearth remains found deep inside. Others say those were just accidental gatherings in natural hollows. Tonight, we're sticking with the idea that these were true armadillo masterpieces. A gust of wind sends a flurry of dust and dry grass skittering across the entrance. You pull your jacket tighter around you, or if you're tucked up in bed listening to this, maybe you pull the blanket higher over your chin and think about the creatures that once called this place home. Glyptodon, the tank-like giant armadillo with its domed shell as thick as a warrior's shield and its tail tipped with a bone club. They could weigh as much as a small car lumbering across the Ice Age plains, leaving behind these massive cold dens as evidence of their passing. You take a step back, trying to imagine the scene thousands of years ago. Dawn breaking over the plain just as it is now, a giant armadillo emerging from its burrow with slow, deliberate steps. Its breath clouds the air, its armored back glistening with frost. Maybe a saber-toothed cat watches from a distance, debating whether it's worth the effort to attack such a heavily defended meal. Probably not. Predators back then had to pick their battles carefully. Before you leave the burrow mouth, you glance down one last time into the tunnel. It seems to beckon you inside, promising secrets and perhaps a few unpleasant surprises. But for now, you stand at the threshold, savoring the quiet and the strange beauty of this ancient architecture. The wind hums softly over the plain, and somewhere far off, a single bird calls. You're alone out here, just you, the cold earth, and the memory of creatures that once ruled this land with nothing but patience, claws, and the need to stay warm beneath the ice age sky. You hesitate only a moment before ducking into the burrow's shadow drawn by the dark promise of what lies beyond its entrance. The temperature drops immediately, as if the earth itself is exhaling the cold breath of long-dead winters. The walls close in just enough to make you acutely aware of your heartbeat, and the soft crunch of your steps on the sandy floor echoes back at you, magnified like the burrow is trying to mimic your sounds. You run your fingers along the packed walls. They're cool, damp in places, and surprisingly smooth, shaped by the patience of claw after claw, carving out this tunnel over centuries. As you move deeper, the chill intensifies, wrapping around you like a damp blanket forgotten in a cellar. The cold isn't just the absence of warmth. It feels active, creeping through your clothes, nipping at your skin, and curling around your bones. Better hope you wore good socks tonight. Some historians still debate whether these cold burrows were intentionally crafted as temperature regulators, or if the deep chill was simply a byproduct of digging deep to escape predators and harsh weather. Either way, you can't deny it, the burrow feels like nature's own refrigerator preserved by the earth's steady ancient breath. You pause for a moment to take it all in. Your breath clouds in the frigid air, and you listen to the subtle sounds that fill the space. The drip of water from a hidden crack above. The faint hiss of soil settling deeper within the tunnel's belly. And maybe, just maybe, the imagined shuffle of an armored beast returning home. Fun fact: even today, the descendants of these giant armadillos, the much smaller, decidedly less intimidating modern armadillos, build burrows that stay several degrees cooler than the outside air. A trick that helps them survive in hot climates. Nature's air conditioning millennia in the making. The tunnel seems to breathe with you, the rhythm of the earth and your own pulse blending together. You take another step forward and your foot scuffs something hard hidden beneath a layer of dirt. You crouch, brushing away the soil, and uncover an ancient claw fragment, yellowed, cracked, and worn smooth at the tip. You hold it up, turning it in the dim light, imagining the creature it once belonged to. A claw like this could dig through roots, compacted earth, and maybe even the occasional unlucky rock. Bet you're glad those claws aren't aimed at you right now. As you move further into the burrow, the tunnel narrows slightly and the cold deepens. You find yourself shivering despite yourself, and you can't help but marvel at how these giant creatures endured. Their bodies, built like living tanks, held the warmth of life deep beneath thick layers of bone and hide. But even they must have felt the cold seep in as they rested in these underground shelters. Historians still argue over just how much time these animals spent below ground. Some claim they lived much like modern armadillos, burrow by day, roam by night. Others suggest these giants used their tunnels as seasonal refuges, hiding from the worst of the Ice Age's chill. Tonight, as you inch deeper into their frozen world, you'll lean toward the latter. Suddenly, you catch a glint of frost in the dim light clinging to the burrow walls like delicate lace. It's beautiful in a stark, lonely way. You pause, brushing your fingers over the ice crystals. They melt immediately at your touch, leaving wet trails on your skin. The cold burrow, it seems, is as much a trap for moisture as it is for warmth. And as you stand there, you realize that this tunnel, with all its ancient chill, is a perfect place for preserving history itself. You take a breath, deep, slow, letting the cold air fill your lungs, and continue deeper into the armadillo's hidden world. Each step crunches softly, each sound magnified by the close walls. You think of those giant builders scraping, clawing, pushing earth aside with a patience that modern humans can barely imagine. No rush, no machines, just raw determination and the need to survive. Somewhere above, the wind moans across the plain, but here in the belly of the burrow, the world is silent save for your heartbeat and the echo of your steps. The chill wraps around you tighter now, and you're starting to understand why these burrows could have offered such perfect refuge from predators and the brutal Ice Age winds. In here, there's no scent trail for a saber-toothed cat to follow, no easy way for dire wolf to dig through compacted earth. It's a fortress built from patience, persistence, and a need for shelter that transcends time. Makes your apartment feel a little flimsy by comparison. Huh? And so you move deeper. The cold burrow cradling you like a long-forgotten grave but alive with the memory of those who once dug it. The chill is no longer just in the air. It's in your bones, in your breath, in the very sound of your heartbeat. You press on because the secrets of this ancient tunnel are just beginning to reveal themselves, and there's no turning back now. The cold presses tighter as you shuffle farther down the burrow, your breath hanging thick in the air, swirling like lazy smoke. The walls close in a little more, but not enough to make you claustrophobic, just enough to remind you that you're deep beneath the ancient skin of the earth. The tunnel floor is littered with small stones and clumps of compacted soil that crumble beneath your boots. You stop to examine the walls again, running your fingers over deep gouges, the unmistakable marks of claws that worked tirelessly in the dark. These aren't random scratches, there is a rhythm to them, a pattern that speaks of deliberate, methodical digging. You crouch low, tracing one groove with your fingertip. The mark is broad, too broad for any predator's claw and far too purposeful to be the work of accident. This was made by a giant armadillo, a creature that historians still debate over. Did it dig with slow, deliberate strength, or was its digging more of a frenzied, desperate attempt to escape danger? The grooves suggest the former. You can almost imagine the sound of claws scraping through layers of dirt and clay, a soft, steady shk like a heartbeat in the earth. Fun fact, the claws of a giant armadillo could grow up to 8 inches long, about the length of your average kitchen knife. Imagine trying to garden with those. Actually don't. Your flower beds would never recover. And those claws weren't just for digging. Some researchers believe they could tear apart rotting logs in search of food or fend off predators with a well-placed swipe. Historians still argue whether armadillos used their claws more as tools or as weapons, but staring at these walls, you're convinced they were made for building. The tunnel seems to shift subtly under your weight, not dangerously, just the soft settling of soil that has held its breath for thousands of years. You pause and listen again. And this time, you swear, you hear something else, the faintest whisper of water dripping deeper inside and the quiet sigh of earth adjusting itself around you. The burrow feels alive in a way that modern buildings never could. A living monument to creatures that shaped it with nothing but bone, muscle, and willpower. You move further in and the claw marks become more distinct. Some are angled down where a giant armadillo would have pressed its claws to break through tougher layers of soil. Others curve upward as if the animal had paused to clear debris or widen its tunnel. The pattern of the marks tells a story of persistent, slow progress, inch by inch, foot by foot. The builders didn't rush, they didn't need to. They worked with the patience of creatures who understood the land in ways modern humans have forgotten. The cold sharpens as you descend, the temperature falling degree by degree. You can see now why these burrows acted like natural refrigerators. The deeper you go, the steadier and colder the temperature becomes, no matter what the weather above. It's the same principle that keeps modern root cellars cool, only on a massive, prehistoric scale. And as you walk, you can't help but admire the genius of it. No electricity, no blueprints, no YouTube tutorials, just instinct, claws, and determination. Your fingers brush over a patch of wall where the claw marks have worn smooth over time, polished by shifting soil, or perhaps by later animals seeking shelter in the giant's abandoned home. The texture is different here, softer, almost like hardened clay. You tap it gently, and the sound is dull, muffled by the surrounding earth. You wonder how long it took for the armadillo to carve through this layer. Hours, days, weeks. Historians still debate the pace at which these creatures dug. But standing here, you suspect it wasn't about speed at all. It was about survival. And just as you're about to move on your boot kicks against something half buried in the dirt, you crouch, brushing it free, and reveal what looks like the tip of another ancient claw yellowed with age and cracked at the base. You turn it over in your hand, marveling at its weight and size. It's a relic of the builder itself, a reminder that even the most tireless digger leaves pieces of itself behind in the end. You tuck it into your pocket. Don't worry, no one's going to blame you for a little harmless souvenir. The tunnel ahead beckons darker now, the walls pressing in a little tighter. You take a breath of the cold, still air and move forward, eager to see what other secrets this ancient engineering marvel might reveal. You press onward, the cold burrow wrapping around you like a quiet warning. The deeper you go, the more the tunnel seems to hum with the memory of its builders, giant armadillos who, with nothing more than muscle and claw, carve these chambers as sanctuaries against the brutal world above. The air is sharp, tinged with the faint scent of wet earth and old stone. Every step you take crunches softly on a floor, layered with centuries of dust and debris. The tunnel widens unexpectedly, revealing a chamber round spacious almost like a forgotten room in the house of the ancients. You stand in its center, and your breath forms clouds that linger longer here, trapped in the stillness. This space, you realize, would have been a fortress for the armadillo, a retreat against predators that roam the Ice Age plains. Saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, even the massive, short-faced bear, none could easily breach these fortified homes. Historians still debate how often such predators attempted it. Were these burrows common knowledge on the predator's menu, or were they so well hidden that only the most desperate hunter dared to test them? You can't help but imagine it, a giant armadillo hunkered down in this chamber, its shell braced against the narrowest part of the tunnel, its tail club twitching at the ready, waiting out the snarl and claw of some hungry cat above. The idea makes you grin. Nature's armored tank parked for the night. Fun fact, modern armadillos still use the same strategy, wedging themselves into burrows so tightly that predators can't pull them out. In fact, ranchers in parts of South America have long told stories of dogs trying and failing to dig them out, coming back with nothing but muddy paws and a bruised ego. You move to one side of the chamber, your boots crunching over small bones, tiny, fragile nothing from a giant armadillo. Maybe the remains of rodents who tried to claim the burrow long after its original owner had moved on. Or maybe something brought down here as a meal by a predator that got lucky. The burrow holds these stories close etched into its soil like forgotten diary pages. Running your hand along the wall, you feel deep claw marks again. This time more chaotic, less rhythmic than the ones in the tunnel. Perhaps this was where the digging grew desperate as the armadillo tried to widen its chamber quickly in the face of some threat. Or perhaps, as some historians argue, these marks came later from another animal seeking shelter, adding its own frantic scratches to the record of the burrow's history. The chill in this chamber is different, deeper, more complete. It's as if the cold has settled here, permanently trapped beneath layers of soil and memory. You can see why these burrows could protect their builders not just from predators, but from the extremes of the Ice Age climate. Inside, the temperature would have remained steady, insulated by tons of earth. Outside, the winds howled, and the snow piled deep, but here in this hidden hollow, the giant armadillo could rest warm beneath its armored shell. You glance toward this dark mouth of a side tunnel, half collapsed, as if the earth itself has tried to erase it. What stories might have played out down that forgotten path? Did a predator once find its way in only to be driven back by a furious armadillo? Did the tunnel give way during a storm, trapping its maker inside? Historians still argue about whether such cave-ins contributed to the extinction of these ancient giants, or if the burrows ironically became their final tombs. A soft noise makes you pause. The faintest drip of water, steady as a heartbeat, echoing from somewhere deeper inside. You smile. Even in a world long abandoned by its builders, the burrow lives on, changing, settling, speaking in the language of stone and time. The chamber seems to breathe with you cold air, flowing in and out like the sigh of a sleeping giant. You take a final look around before moving on the walls of the chamber, glistening faintly where moisture has seeped through. You can almost picture the giant armadillo settling in for the night safe behind its natural armor, the cold kept at bay by layers of earth and instinct. The burrow isn't just a shelter. It's a monument to persistence, a reminder that even the smallest claws can shape the world one scrape at a time. And so, with the cold settling deeper into your bones, you turn toward the next tunnel ready to follow where the ancient builders once led. You step carefully into the next tunnel, the chamber behind you swallowed by the darkness and quiet, as if it had never existed at all. The air is colder here, sharper, and it clings to your skin like a second icy coat. The walls narrow and the ceiling dips lower, forcing you to hunch slightly as you move forward. Your light, whether it's a headlamp, a phone screen, or just the glow of your imagination, catches on subtle variations in the earth, cracks veins of darker soil, and here and there, the glint of tiny mineral flecks like the burrow is studded with forgotten stars. Suddenly, the tunnel splits. One path veers off and looks like it collapsed long ago, the roof sagging in a grave for whatever secrets lay beyond. The other tunnel continues deeper, and you choose it drawn by the promise of discovery. After a few careful steps, the walls widen again, and you find yourself in another chamber, this one smaller but neater somehow. The floor is more level, the claw marks more uniform. You pause, realizing you're standing inside what must have been a side chamber, maybe a resting spot, or even a nursery for a younger armadillo if the theories of certain historians hold true. Though, honestly, can you imagine a baby armadillo the size of a washing machine? Cute but terrifying. Historians still debate whether these side chambers were intentional or simply the result of the giant's quest for food, digging through roots, chasing after burrowing prey, or following the scent of water. The layout feels too purposeful to be accidental, but who can say for sure nature doesn't always share its blueprints? You take slow steps around the chamber's edge, noticing where the walls seem fresher, less worn by time and settling soil. A small side tunnel no wider than your shoulders branches off, but it's partially blocked by fallen earth. You crouch, peering into the tight space, and imagine the armadillo squeezing through its armored plates, scraping the walls, its claws raking the dirt with steady determination. Fun fact, modern armadillos can hold their breath for up to 6 minutes, allowing them to dig through loose soil or even swim across rivers without too much fuss. Whether their ancient cousins had the same talent is up for debate, but standing here, you suspect they didn't mind a little dust in their lungs if it meant creating a perfect shelter. You pause again, listening. The burrow hums with silence, an odd, full kind of silence that feels heavier than the noise of the world above. Somewhere behind you, a tiny pebble shifts and rolls its sound, startling in the stillness. Your heart jumps. You grin to yourself, shaking your head. Relax. It's just the earth settling, probably. The cold here is different. It feels more permanent, as if this part of the burrow has been holding on to the chill of the ice age itself, refusing to let it go even after millennia. The air smells clean with that unmistakable tang of damp soil and ancient stone. You run your hand along the walls again, finding more of those familiar claw marks. Steady, patient, methodical. The builders were in no hurry. Every scrape, every scoop of soil was part of a long, quiet process of survival. You glance at the collapsed tunnel and wonder what stories ended there. Did the roof give way while the armadillo was inside or after it had moved on? Historians still argue about how often these burrows turned into traps rather than sanctuaries. Some claim the creature's own size sometimes doomed them, making escape impossible if the tunnel collapsed. Others say the burrows were marvels of natural engineering, rarely failing their makers. Tonight, the truth lies buried beyond that fallen earth. You stay in the chamber a little longer, letting its cold embrace seep into your thoughts. The walls seem to breathe with you, the weight of time pressing in, the echoes of the past whispering in the silence. The deeper you go, the more the burrow feels like a world apart, a place carved not just from soil and stone, but from determination, instinct, and the quiet, steady need to endure. When you finally move on, it's with a sense of quiet respect. The burrow may be empty now, but its story is etched into every claw mark, every fallen stone, every silent shadowed chamber that waits for someone like you to find it again. You move slowly now, as if the cold itself has thickened the air, turning each step into a careful negotiation with the burrow's deep hush. The tunnel ahead dips slightly, and as you follow its gentle slope, the silence shifts, not louder, not broken, but layered, textured with subtle sounds you didn't notice before. You stop holding your breath and listen. There it is, the faint drip, drip, drip of water somewhere farther in. The soft creak of settling earth. And something else, an odd echo, like the ghost of a long-forgotten digging rhythm, claw on stone, claw on soil. You smile to yourself. Your mind's playing tricks again? But you keep listening, drawn in by this strange burrow symphony. Each sound seems magnified down here. The water drips are deliberate, like slow punctuation marks in the dark. The soil settling is a gentle shuffling, as if the burrow itself is stretching after a long sleep. You even imagine you hear wind, but that's impossible this far down. The armadillos built these homes to escape the wind's bite, not invited in. Fun fact, even today, modern armadillo burrows amplify sound in surprising ways. Ranchers have reported hearing the echoes of animals moving underground long before the creatures reach the surface. Some claim you can hear an armadillo digging from 20 feet away if the soil conditions are right. Historians still debate whether ancient hunters learned to track giant armadillos by listening at burrow entrances, or if the sound simply added to the eerie reputation of these underground homes. The tunnel widens a bit as you continue, and your boots crunch over loose soil that shifts just enough to make your heart skip. The echoes play with you, bouncing your footfalls back at odd angles, making it sound like something or someone walks just behind. You stop, turn, see nothing but the darkness you've left behind, and grin despite the chill. If this were a horror movie, this would be the part where you run. But hey, you're made of sterner stuff, right? The air smells different down here, too. Damp, yes, but with a faint mineral tang, like the earth's bones are close to the surface. The cold deepens as you walk, not biting, but absolute a stillness so complete it feels like the air itself is frozen. Every sound you make seems intrusive, like you're interrupting some ancient silent ritual. You pause again at a bend in the tunnel, leaning against the wall and letting the burrow symphony wash over you. The dripping water seems louder here, more insistent, as if marking time in a place where time long ago stopped mattering. The creak of settling soil is deeper, like the voice of the earth itself mumbling in its sleep. And every so often you swear you hear the faint echo of claws, as if the builders still work somewhere ahead just out of reach. Historians still argue whether these burrows served only as shelter or if they played a role in armadillo communication. Some suggest the tunnels acted as amplifiers for low sounds, the rumble of an approaching mate, or the warning scrape of a rival's claws. Others dismiss it as fanciful theory, but standing here with the burrow sounds wrapping around you, you can't help but wonder. A flicker of movement catches your eye, and your heart leaps only to realize it's a trick of the light, a shadow cast by your own breath fogging the cold air. You let out a shaky laugh. Congratulations, you've officially scared yourself with your own breathing. New personal best. You press on the burrow's sounds, your constant companion. Each drip, each echo, each subtle creak of earth is a reminder that this place lives on in its own way. The builders may be long gone, but their home endures, singing its quiet, eerie song to any who dare to listen. And tonight, that listener is you. You shuffle deeper still. The burrow's cold breath now a steady presence against your skin, seeping through fabric, settling into your bones. It's the kind of cold that doesn't just make you shiver, it makes you think. And think about the creatures that carve these tunnels, the ones that lived in a world where warmth was a fleeting luxury and survival meant outsmarting the ice age itself. The irony isn't lost on you. These giant armadillos, warm-blooded beasts with bodies built for battle, chose to shelter in homes that felt like natural freezers. You pause and press your palm against the wall. It's damp with condensation cold enough that it almost stings your skin. The chill radiates inward from the packed earth, as if the burrow itself remembers the glaciers that once ruled the land. You wonder how these heat-loving creatures managed in such conditions. Historians still debate whether giant armadillos were more cold-tolerant than we give them credit for, or if the burrows were their last desperate attempt to cling to warmth in a changing world. Either way, these tunnels were their lifeline, a place where the cold couldn't steal all their heat, at least not right away. Fun fact: modern armadillos are notoriously bad at regulating body temperature. They rely on burrows to escape both heat and cold, since their thin fur and armor don't offer much insulation. Imagine their giant cousins lumbering into these icy homes, curling up as best they could armored shells against the cold claws tucked beneath them like awkward prehistoric mittens. You move forward, your breath fogging the air in soft bursts, each cloud swallowed quickly by the burrow's endless chill. The walls here are closer together, the tunnel narrowing, forcing you to duck slightly. The floor is littered with pebbles and the faint remnants of roots, long dead threads that once sought moisture in the soil. The cold has claimed everything down here, root, stone, even the scent of life. All that remains is the memory of warmth, a ghost lingering in the dark. The burrow feels timeless. You could be walking in the present or 10,000 years ago. The cold erases the difference, makes you part of its frozen stillness. You can almost see it, the giant armadillo breath steaming in the dark. Its bulk filling the tunnel, its body a slow-moving furnace against the night. Maybe it pressed itself into a chamber like this one, resting its weary limbs, listening to the sounds of the earth settling around it. Or maybe, as some believe, these creatures were more nomadic, digging new burrows as they moved, leaving behind these cold shelters, like abandoned castles of soil. You brush against a section of wall where the earth has crumbled slightly, revealing layers of packed dirt and clay. The cross-section tells its own story. Dark bands of ancient topsoil, lighter streaks of sand, a thin line of gravel. Each layer a page in the burrow's history. Each scrape of claw a sentence in the silent journal of survival. Historians still argue whether these burrows were reused by generations of armadillos or abandoned after a single inhabitant's death. Either way, you're standing in the middle of their legacy, the cold walls whispering secrets you can almost but not quite hear. Your breath comes slower now, not from exhaustion, but from awe. The deeper you go, the more the burrow feels like a temple, a place where the builders left behind not just shelter but meaning. The cold isn't just a temperature here, it's a memory, a reminder of a world that was harsher, older, and far less forgiving than the one you know. And yet somehow, life carved a place for itself in that world, claw by claw, scrape by scrape, breath by breath. A drip of water lands on your wrist, startling in its icy precision. You glance up at the low ceiling where tiny beads of moisture cling to the earth like jewels. The cold has preserved them, suspended in time. You wipe your wrist dry and smile, realizing that in this frozen world beneath the ground, even a single drop of water feels like a message from the past. And you, the curious intruder, are here to listen. You edge forward, the cold burrow now wrapping around you like an old familiar coat, one that doesn't warm but somehow comforts. The tunnel takes a gentle curve, and suddenly the floor levels out into a small hollow, its ceiling arching high enough that you can finally stand straight again. You pause, eyes adjusting to the dimness, and spot something half buried near the far wall. You crouch, brushing away loose soil with your gloved hand or bare fingers if you're feeling especially bold tonight, and uncover a small mound of hardened dung fossilized by time and earth. You grin. Congratulations, you just found prehistoric poop. But in truth, this is no joke. To paleontologists, such a find is a treasure trove, a window into the diet, health, and habitat of the creature that left it behind. This hardened relic tells you that the armadillo sheltered here, ate here, lived here. Maybe it was the last to call this burrow home, or one of many in a long line of tenants. Historians still debate whether these cold burrows acted as lifelong homes or temporary shelters along migration paths. But the dung, like everything else down here, offers clues without answers. You examine the chamber and notice more tiny bones embedded in the soil, too small for the giant builder. Rodent birds. Maybe the leftovers of a scavenger's meal or the unfortunate remains of something that wandered in and couldn't find its way out. And they're wedged between two stones near the far corner. You blink, leaning closer to be sure is a shape that doesn't belong. You dig carefully, soil crumbling away beneath your touch until you reveal it. A shard of worked stone chipped along one edge. A tool. A fragment of a spear point. Or just a rock broken by chance. Historians still argue over such finds. Some claim early humans followed giant armadillos using their burrows for shelter or as traps for the animals themselves. Others insist that's wishful thinking, that people and armadillos shared the land but not their homes. But tonight, as you hold this mysterious artifact in the cold dark of the burrow, it's easy to imagine those ancient hunters crouched here waiting, listening for the scrape of claws or the shuffle of armored feet. Fun fact, in some parts of South America, indigenous stories tell of giant burrowers that shaped the land, carving rivers and valleys with their claws. Some even believe these creatures dug so deep that their tunnels led to the underworld. Whether those tales were inspired by real encounters with creatures like the giant armadillo, or by the eerie presence of burrows like this one, no one can say for sure. But it adds a touch of myth to the silent chambers you now explore. You tuck the stone shard back where you found it. No need to rob the burrow of its secrets, and rise, brushing dust from your knees. The air feels colder here, the kind of cold that carries weight, as if the chamber itself remembers those who came before. You glance once more at the fossilized dung, the tiny bones, the strange artifact. Together, they tell a story no book could fully capture, a tale written in earth and time, claw marks and quiet, the hidden diary of a world long gone. The sounds return as you move again, the soft drip of water, the faint groan of settling soil, and your own heartbeat loud in the hush. The burrow seems to breathe with you, holding its history close, offering only hints to those patient enough to listen. And tonight, that listener is you. You move on the tunnel, sloping gently downward again, as if guiding you deeper into the earth's hidden memories. The air grows colder still, and now it carries a faint musk-old dry, the scent of soil and stone mingled with the faintest trace of decay long past. The tunnel widens slightly ahead, and your light, or perhaps just your imagination, catches on something large slumped against the wall where the burrow bends. You draw closer, heart thumping a little faster despite the chill. What you see stops you in your tracks. Bones, massive bones, splayed out in the unmistakable shape of a giant sloth. Its skull tilts awkwardly against the wall, its ribs like fallen arches, its claws still curled as if in one last futile grasp at safety. The giant sloth, not a predator, but another herbivore like the armadillo, had somehow ended up sharing this cold refuge. And judging by the position of its remains, this chamber became its final resting place. Historians still debate what led to such unlikely roommates. Did the sloth wander into the burrow by accident, seeking shelter from a storm or predator? Was it wounded, unable to climb out of the pit it had stumbled into? Or, as some suggest, were these cold burrows known havens for multiple species, each hoping the Earth's embrace would hide them from the dangers above? You can almost picture it, the giant sloth creeping in eyes, wary limbs heavy, the cold settling into its thick fur as it tried in vain to find safety. Fun fact though, they seem clumsy in reconstructions. Giant sloths could stand over 10 feet tall on their hind legs and wield claws as long as steak knives. Despite their size, they were gentle herbivores unless cornered. Then those claws could slice through vegetation or predator alike. But here in this frozen tomb, the claws tell no story of battle, only of exhaustion and defeat. You crouch beside the bones, tracing the edge of a rib with your fingertips. The cold has preserved them well, the soil hard-packed around them like a protective shell. Small stones and dirt cling to the skeleton as if the earth itself is reluctant to let go of its charge. The sloth's skull bears a crack along one side, perhaps from a fall or from the slow settling of the tunnel over centuries. Historians still debate whether such burrows sometimes became traps rather than sanctuaries, luring in creatures who found escape impossible once inside. Looking at these remains, you can see why the argument persists. You sit for a moment, the silence thick around you, broken only by that ever-present drip of water somewhere deeper within. The sloth's bones are a reminder that survival in this ancient world was a delicate balance, one slip, one wrong turn, and even the largest, most formidable creatures could be claimed by the cold and dark. The chamber feels heavier now, as if the presence of these bones has deepened the chill. You stand slowly, giving the sloth one last respectful glance. Its story is written in this place, in the soil, in the bones, in the silent testimony of a creature who once roamed a world both brutal and beautiful. And then you turn toward the tunnel that leads onward, the path of the builders calling you deeper still, where more secrets wait beneath the earth's cold skin. You leave the sloth's silent tomb behind, moving deeper into the burrow, where the air feels denser, the cold thicker, as if each step draws you closer to the earth's frozen heart. The tunnel bends gently, the floor rising and falling beneath your feet, like the landscape above, only softened by time and the steady claw work of its ancient builder. You pause, running your hand along the walls again, feeling for the familiar grooves. And there they are, deep, wide striations, carved by the rhythmic scraping of claws, each mark a record of patient, deliberate labor. You picture it now as clearly as if the creature stood before you, the giant armadillo, heavy and steady, working the soil with slow, powerful motions. Its claws scrape forward, drag down, then pull back, clearing the loosened earth behind it with swipes of those armored forelimbs. The digging dance, if you will, a slow, methodical waltz with the dirt. Probably not as graceful as a ballet, but hey, they got the job done. Historians still debate the pace of this digging. Some argue that giant armadillos could hollow out these massive tunnels in a matter of weeks, driven by need and instinct. Others suggest the work took months, even years, as the creature slowly expanded its home bit by bit, following the lines of least resistance in the soil. Standing here, surrounded by the marks of that ancient effort, you lean toward the latter. The burrow feels like the result of slow, stubborn determination, not haste. Fun fact, modern armadillos, despite their small size, are relentless diggers. In some parts of the world, homeowners have been known to wake up and find their garden transformed into a miniature trench system overnight. Now imagine that determination scaled up to a creature the size of a compact car. The result. The sprawling, complex burrow you stand in now. You continue down the tunnel, your footsteps soft, as if not to disturb the memory of the builder's work. The claw marks on the walls are layered in places, newer grooves crossing over older ones, as if generations of digging efforts overlapped through time. You wonder if the giant armadillo paused often to rest its massive bulk, filling the tunnel breath, steaming in the cold dark as it gathered strength for the next round of scraping. Maybe it stopped to listen, to ears attuned to the vibrations of the earth, to the sound of predators prowling above, to the silence that meant safety. The rhythm of digging echoes in your imagination, scrape, drag, clear, scrape, drag, clear. The work must have been exhausting but necessary. Each claw stroke carving out a little more security, a little more distance from the dangers of the surface. You pause, close your eyes, and let the imagined sounds of the digging dance fill the space. For a moment, it's as if the ancient builder is still here working alongside you, the cold air stirring with the ghost of its labor. The tunnel narrows slightly ahead, the walls pressing closer, the claw marks more concentrated, as if this was a section of intense effort where the soil fought back harder, or where the need for shelter drove the armadillo to dig deeper faster. You run your hand along these grooves, feeling the depth of each mark, the power behind them. The digging dance wasn't elegant, but it was effective. A survival waltz written in earth and claw, repeated over and over until the burrow became a fortress. You move on, the cold and the quiet, your only companions. The memory of that ancient dance etched into every inch of the tunnel around you. The builder is gone, but its work remains a lasting monument to patience, persistence, and the simple, unstoppable need to endure. The tunnel widens again, as if offering you a moment to breathe, to stretch, to feel something other than the close press of earth and cold. You step into the broader chamber, your breath a soft cloud in the still air, and pause to take it all in. The walls here are smoother, polished in places where countless armored bodies must have brushed past over the ages. And here, the cold seems less biting, as though this part of the burrow holds its own quiet warmth, not of temperature, but of history, of legend. You smile to yourself, recalling the old myths you once heard about these places. Long before historians argued over the facts, people whispered that these vast burrows led to the underworld itself. Some believed giant armadillos weren't just animals, but guardians of hidden worlds beneath the earth, their tunnels doorways to realms of spirits and sleeping gods. Even today, in remote corners of the world, such stories linger, passed down in the quiet hours by firelight. You have to admit, standing here, it's not hard to see why. Historians, of course, still debate the origins of these myths. Did early humans stumble upon abandoned burrows and let their imaginations fill the darkness? Or did the sight of such vast tunnels, too large for any living animal they knew, inspire tales of supernatural builders and secret pathways? The truth, as always, is probably a tangled mix of both. But tonight, as you stand in the cold hush of this chamber, you can almost believe the old stories. Fun fact: in some indigenous traditions of South America, giant burrowing creatures, whether armadillos or imagined beings, were said to shape the landscape, itself carving rivers and valleys, with their claws creating safe places for humans and animals alike. These creatures weren't feared so much as respected, seen as ancient engineers working in partnership with the land. Makes your neighborhood mole look kind of heroic by comparison, doesn't it? You walk slowly around the chamber, boots crunching softly on the packed earth. The claw marks are fewer here, as if the builders paused their work, content with what they'd created. The walls curve gently inward at the top, creating a natural dome that feels almost architectural, like a cathedral carved by instinct and muscle. You tilt your head back, imagining the giant armadillo resting here, its armored back rising and falling, with each slow breath safe in the shelter it had carved with its own strength. The air carries a faint, earthy scent, stone dust, and the memory of roots that once tried to creep through these walls but found no purchase. You run your hand along the smoothest section of wall where time and perhaps generations of use have worn away the sharp edges of claw marks. The chamber feels sacred somehow, a place of pause between the labor of digging and the struggles of life above. You think of the people who might have found this place long after the builders were gone. Did they light fires here, hoping to ward off the cold? Did they listen to the echoes of their own voices and imagine them to be the whispers of spirits? Historians still argue whether humans ever truly entered these burrows, or if the stories of such journeys are just the stuff of campfire legend. But you standing here tonight are part of that story, now a visitor in the quiet heart of the underworld's front hall. The cold presses gently around you, not unkind but firm, reminding you that this place belongs to the past. You take one last look at the chamber, the gentle curves of its walls, the silent testimony of its creation, and then turn toward the next tunnel. The path leads on, and with it more secrets waiting beneath the skin of the ancient earth. You ease back into the narrowing tunnel, the comfort of that wide, almost sacred chamber fading behind you like a dream you're already starting to forget at. The cold sharpens once more the walls, closing in the ceiling, dipping low enough that you have to stoop. The air is still heavy, carrying that same mineral tang and the faint smell of ancient, undisturbed soil. You move carefully, boots crunching softly, aware that here in these tighter spaces the burrow's secrets may take a darker turn. And then you see it. A hollow ahead where the floor suddenly drops an open pit, a trap waiting in the dark. You crouch at its edge, heart thudding. The pit isn't wide, just enough to catch the unwary, but it's deep. Its sides sheer where the earth has fallen away. The soil compacted so tightly it gleams faintly in your light. And at the bottom, a tangle of bones. Long curved fangs glint where a skull lies half buried in the dirt, and you realize with a jolt that you're looking at the remains of a predator, perhaps a saber-toothed cat, perhaps something else drawn into the burrow by hunger and met with an unseen death. Historians still debate how often such traps occurred. Were they the accidental result of a collapsing tunnel, or did the burrows themselves become deadly mazes to those unfamiliar with their twists and turns? Some suggest that giant armadillos may have survived certain attacks simply because their pursuers couldn't navigate the narrow, shifting passages. Looking down at the bones below, it's easy to believe. The predator became the prey not through battle, but through the quiet, implacable design of the earth itself. Fun fact: modern burrowing animals sometimes create structures that unintentionally trap or confuse predators. There are reports of foxes getting stuck in badger dens, of snakes lost in complex rodent tunnels. Nature's home improvements can sometimes double as accidental defense systems. You sit back on your heels staring down into the pit. The cat's skull is cracked along one side, its teeth bared in a final silent snarl. Its ribs have collapsed inward, the bones twisted in angles that speak of struggle and failure. You imagine it drawn down into the tunnel by the scent of prey, only to slip, to fall, to find itself trapped where claws and teeth are useless against packed soil and cold, unyielding walls. A silent, frozen death beneath the earth. The pit is a reminder that these burrows, for all their shelter and safety, held dangers of their own. The earth is not always kind, even to those who know its ways. You lean over the edge, peering into the darkness below, and feel the chill of the pit's breath rise to meet you. The cold here is deeper, older, as if the pit itself remembers the lives it claimed. You move back from the edge, careful where you place your feet, and glance around. The tunnel walls are marked with more claw grooves here, deeper, more frenzied than before. Perhaps this was where an armadillo dug in haste, desperate to escape a pursuing predator. Or perhaps the soil here was unstable, collapsing beneath the weight of claw and armor, creating this hidden snare. Historians still debate whether such cave-ins were common, or if they were rare tragedies, the price paid for life underground. You stand in the hush of the tunnel, listening to the silence. The pit waits behind you, a dark mouth that swallowed predator and prey alike. And ahead, the tunnel winds on, promising more secrets, more stories written in earth and bone. You take a breath, the cold filling your lungs, and step carefully forward, leaving the pit and its memories behind. You move beyond the pit with slow, measured steps, as if the burrow itself is testing your resolve, seeing if you'll dare to continue. The tunnel bends again, deeper now, the air growing colder still. So cold that each breath feels like it carves tiny sculptures of frost inside your lungs. The earth here smells sharper, richer, like wet stone and ancient clay, and the quiet has deepened into something almost sacred. You can feel it in your bones. You're near the heart of the burrow, the final chamber, the deepest hollow where the builder's work came to rest. And there it is. The tunnel opens suddenly and you step into a vast, rounded chamber larger than any you've seen so far. The walls curve upward into a high dome of packed soil so smooth it almost gleams in the dim light. The floor is level, the air deathly still, the cold complete and unbroken. You stand there, breath fogging in the quiet, and feel as though you've stumbled into a forgotten cathedral. One built not of stone, but of claw and patience. You walk slowly across the chamber, boots muffled against the packed earth eyes, tracing the walls for those familiar claw marks. But here they're harder to find. The surface is too clean, as if the armadillo that dug this place had help perhaps from time, or from natural caves hidden beneath the soil, or from some forgotten trick of the Ice Age Earth. Historians still debate whether these deepest chambers were truly dug by the armadillos, or whether the creatures simply found and expanded natural hollows. The smoothness of the walls here makes you wonder. Fun fact, in modern times, some burrowing animals do exactly that, taking over. Abandoned dens, hollow logs, or natural cracks in the earth, rather than building entirely from scratch. It's efficient after all. Why dig when nature's already done part of the work? Maybe the ancient giants were just as practical. You pause at the chamber's center and crouch, brushing your hand over the cold floor. The soil is hard, compacted by ages of weight. But here and there, tiny fragments of bone and shell are embedded in its surface. Not enough to tell a clear story, but enough to remind you that this was once a place of life, of shelter, of endings. The cold here feels different, not just the chill of the earth, but the deeper cold of time itself, the kind that seeps into stone and memory and stays long after the world above has moved on. You glance around, half expecting to see more bones, more evidence of the chamber's final purpose. But the space is clean, empty, as if the earth has claimed its secrets too tightly to share. You imagine the armadillo resting here, its massive form filling the chamber, its breath rising in slow clouds as it listened for the dangers above. Maybe it lived here for years, or maybe it moved on, leaving the chamber empty for the cold and the dark to inherit. The silence is immense, so complete it feels like a weight on your shoulders. The chamber seems to hold its breath, waiting. You sit quietly, letting the cold seep in, listening for the whispers of claw on soil, of breath in the dark of ancient builders, long gone. The final chamber holds its mystery close, offering only hints, only shadows. Historians still argue, and perhaps they always will, but here in this cold, perfect hollow, the truth belongs to the earth alone. You rise at last, the chamber's stillness clinging to you, and turn back toward the tunnel. The way out waits, but the memory of this place, this final hollow, will follow you, quiet, as the cold, patient as the earth. You begin the long, slow journey back toward the surface, each step heavier now, as if the cold of the deepest chamber clings to your bones, reluctant to let you go. The tunnel seems darker on the return, the cold sharper, the silence thicker. You shuffle along, boots brushing the packed soil, the sound muffled, as though the burrow itself wishes to hush you, to keep its secrets undisturbed. Above you, somewhere beyond layers of frozen earth, the dawn is breaking again, but down here time has no meaning. The tunnel rises gently, each step lifting you closer to the light, though it feels like you're leaving behind something sacred, something ancient. You glance back over your shoulder, half expecting to see the armadillo's shadow following, the great builder still at work, clawing patiently at the earth, shaping the world beneath your feet. But of course, there's nothing there. Just the darkness, just the cold, just the memory of all you've seen. As you near the surface, the air changes. It's subtle at first, a faint hint of movement, the softest whisper of wind filtering down the tunnel mouth, carrying with it the scent of frost-kissed grass and open sky. You pause, drawing in a deep breath, and the taste of the world above fills your lungs clean and sharp. A reminder that you are leaving the cold burrow behind. Historians still debate whether the armadillos ever felt this transition, whether they noticed the shift in air, the pull of the surface, the promise of dawn, or whether they simply moved by instinct driven by hunger or fear, or the endless rhythm of survival. You like to imagine they felt it just as you do now. Fun fact, some modern burrowing animals will pause at their tunnel's mouth at sunrise listening, scenting the air, waiting until the world feels safe before emerging. It's a ritual as old as the soil itself, a quiet negotiation between shelter and sky. And then finally, you emerge. The cold dawn greets you, the plains wide and empty, the grass brittle with frost, the sky painted in pale gold and silver, where the sun rises lazy and slow. The burrow mouth behind you is just a dark hole, now unremarkable to anyone who doesn't know the secrets it holds. But you know. You felt the cold that the earth keeps hidden, walked the tunnels carved by claws and time, stood in chambers where giants once rested. The wind tugs at your coat or your blanket if you're safe in bed listening, and you smile a little tired, a little awed. The plains are silent, except for the soft hiss of the breeze over the burrow mounds, the quiet song of a world that remembers even when we forget. And so you stand there letting the dawn's light wash over you, knowing that the cold burrow still waits beneath your feet, its secret safe, its story whispered in the language of stone and soil, claw and shadow. The journey through the ancient burrow has been a descent into the earth's forgotten memory, a quiet pilgrimage into the hidden world carved by the patience of giant armadillos. With every step you felt the cold deepen, the silence thicken, the weight of time pressing close as the tunnels wrapped you in their embrace. You saw the claw marks that spoke of steady labor, the chambers that offered sanctuary or became tombs, and the final hollow, a place so perfectly shaped it seemed born of both instinct and the earth's own design. Along the way, the burrow revealed its quiet dangers, the predator's bones at the bottom of a pit, the fossilized traces of creatures that sought refuge but found only stillness. Debates of historians echoed with you as you pondered whether these giants truly built every inch or whether they, like you sometimes, found what nature had already started. And above all, the cold burrow taught you a truth as enduring as the soil itself. That survival, whether by claw or by will, is always a dance between strength and patience, risk and shelter. As you emerged into the dawn's pale light, the burrow remained below its story, safe in the hush of the earth, waiting for the next wanderer willing to listen.